There's Paul McStay. Paul McStay with the open goal. 21 minutes into the second half. The Celtic end goes wild.
And they gave us James McRory and Paul McStay. They gave us Johnston, Tully, Murdoch, Gold and Hay. And most of the football greats have passed through Parkhead's gates. But to play football the Glasgow Celtic way. And they played football the Glasgow Celtic way.
Hello, welcome to the Celtic Ray podcast. My name is Stephen Ray. I am your host, and again, I'm joined this week by Kevin McColgan. Kevin, I'd like to say how you doing, but I think it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, I think we'll just stop with the friendlies and just get in with it. I think.
I was just saying before we came on there, this isn't a hobby; it's therapy.
Yeah, it is going to be alternative therapy. I think without having to kind of smash anything up, this is alternative therapy because that was shocking last night.
I know. Where do you start? I suppose you start at the beginning. You need to excuse me. My wife's decided to walk in just as I start recording. So, cheers for that.
You don't swear. That's all it is. She's just doing a Davina McCall on Channel 4.
Aye. Honestly, I said you get everybody quiet in the house. You shut the dogs up and you tell the Waynes if they need the toilet, do it downstairs, and then just as you hit record, she walks in.
That's a good thing anyway. About living with my parents there down the stairs, and I just tell it to be quiet, you know. just before we sort of get into this, my boy has been pestering me big time to get on the podcast, and he's only 13, right? So, and I'm like, Sean, you're not getting on the podcast, and I was like, all right. So I made an agreement with him that I would do like a wee mini match companion thing. So last night we done a couple of minutes before kick-off, a couple of minutes at half time, and then a couple of minutes at full time. I recorded it on my phone, so at the end of us, I'll add it on at the end if anybody wants to hear how it got on. He done all right, to be fair. So what game to bring him into though? I mean, geez, you know, of all the games, you know, and
wasn't the best of starts.
No, it wasn't. It was not. I mean, the lineup itself certainly raised a few eyebrows right at the start.
I was going to say there was a rumour kicking about a couple of hours before kick-off that Christie was going to start up front, and I'm like, nah, somebody's fucking at it, man. That's a wind-up. I knew there was a potential that Edward might not be fit because Lennon left that right to the death on his press conference because he was being asked all sorts of questions and he didn't want to answer anything to do with transfers. He looked as if he'd rather be somewhere else, and then I just thought, this is just generic shite. He's not really telling anybody anything. And then somebody messaged me to say, oh, by the way, he said at the end Edward's got a thigh strain. Well, I fucking missed it, but
I couldn't believe it. Like when you see the rumours, and there's a certain, you know, Twitter account, Hoopsman Brian, who I think has his own legion of fans, and people will be with him and people not believe him, but he certainly got it bang on last night with the exact lineup, and you just knew that it was more coming into it where like, everybody was saying, oh, I don't know, and this is bad, but I don't see why he didn't start with a striker. Okay, yet he isn't fit, but you've got to go with Klimality. We've been here before with not starting with a striker in a cup final, starting with Lewis Morgan up front. It does not work. Why he done it, I do not know. I don't know what possessed him to do it. I still don't know what he thought would be the good out of that.
Well, when I seen the lineup come out for the official Twitter page, I just rather than say anything, I just put a gif up with a wee Wayne trying to put a square peg into a round hole.
I must admit, I did find that more funny than I really should have. But
so right away you're like, this is gonna be more. This is going to be more difficult than it should be, you know. And I'm not saying I could tell. I knew Ferencváros were a decent side, you know. They're not a great side, but they're a champions of a similar size league to what we've got. You know, the budget wise, they're about 25 to 30 million turnover, so that puts them in the it puts them below Rangers, but it puts them above Aberdeen and Hearts. So you're thinking, well, it's a capable side. I think it was roughly on a par with the likes of Copenhagen and Maribor, these types of teams. So you knew that, if you got, they're no mugs. They're going to be well organised, and apparently Rebrov is a pretty good coach, because I heard Stephen Naismith talk about coming up against a Rebrov team in Europe when he was with Everton. So you knew that it was going to be a difficult tie, but no insurmountable, But you right away you're off to a negative, and to me, it's almost as if Lennon knows that Ncham should be in the team, but he doesn't want to drop Brown because Ncham's real position is centre midfield. Mm-hmm. He doesn't want to drop Christie because Lennon likes having somebody that can shoot for distance. Just if you get a chance, shoot. That seems to be, because I'm sure he's mentioned that before. So Christie's good for long range shots, so he doesn't want to drop him. And then there's Forrest, who's his kind of favourite. So it's almost as if he's just trying to fit everybody that he wanted in, and to hell with the formation.
Aye, don't drop any of my mates at any cost, essentially.
And for me, that's a sign of weakness. It's
aye. It's not a sign of a good manager at all. And when you looked at it last night, obviously we'll kind of go through the game a wee bit more, but when you looked at it, it was limited to long shots, and they weren't getting anywhere really close, apart from, like a couple of occasions where we did get in and Elyounoussi maybe could have squared to Christie, and that's a tap in, but it seemed to be it was just get to the 20-yard line and have a crack. And we're all over the place at the start of the match, all over the place.
Well, on my notes, when we kick off, obviously teams come out, we kick off, and I counted within the first 45 seconds, 3 times Brown went to try and intercept, challenge, or try and break up play, because they obviously kicked off, and 3 times they just pinged the ball in about him, and he was just chasing shadows. And right away I'm thinking, he's fucking all over the shop. And I don't want this to become the Scott Brown bashing podcast, but you've got to call it as you see it. So right away, I don't want to sort of bounce back between last night's game and Saturday's game against United, but what I noticed with Scott Brown on Saturday is he wasn't disciplined in a sort of defensive midfield role. He was almost trying to be kind of box to box the way he used to be when he first came to Celtic, and
exactly, yeah.
Obviously so there was times in Saturday where Dundee United were on the break, and Scott Brown's chasing back and getting totally outpaced. And I think two of their best chances, and especially that shot that went straight to Barkas, came from Scott Brown just no being in his position. And I think, McGregor's no, he's no away scot free, but you feel as if he's trying to do the job of almost 2 men. And he's kind of caught between his midfield role, bursting forward and dropping deep. So I don't know what you think.
I do agree with you with Brown, but I think there was times last night that he certainly wasn't the only one that was played out of position. There was times right at the very start where Taylor was so far up the park that there was that, I can't remember the guy's name, but the right winger in the 4-3-3 formation that they were playing, he was well ahead, and Taylor's well out a shot to try and get back, and there's nobody there to defend him.
Well, for the first 4 minutes, I thought McGregor was playing left back. And I'm thinking, well, where the fuck's Taylor? And sure enough, what you said, Taylor was over the halfway line, so it was almost as if McGregor had decided to drop in and cover for him.
And it's a big bugbear of mine. He seems to think he just has to be this attacking fullback, but he has to actually learn that he needs to defend as well, and he needs to keep his line.
Yeah.
The thing as well with the goal, and I think me and you have looked at it as well. 5 guys on the one area, or looking
through a duvet or them. You could have put them under an umbrella, and every one of them would have stayed dry. That's how close they all were together. You
can see El Hamid trying to say, you need to be further over, but it's too late by the time he's saying it, and your man's having a crack at goal. And you've got to say it's a fantastic strike right in the bottom corner, but he should be nowhere near getting that time and space to hit that ball.
Yeah. I've seen some people criticise him, and I wasn't sure at the time whether he should have done better. And I heard Darren Brazil on TalkSport this morning saying, keeper should do better. But it's a ferocious shot, and it's right into the side net, and it's one of the ones where it's hit high and it dips really, quite a lot at the end. the problem comes. No, I don't blame necessarily the goalkeeper, because the guy's got basically a free 25-yard shot at goal. When the crosses come in, I think it might have been McGregor that's headed it up, and Taylor for some reason is the guy chasing out to the middle of the park, but the guy, he does it to his right. Forrest has done nothing. He's standing behind the guy who headers it. So all of a sudden, Scott Brown's in a position where he's got the guy ahead of him with the option to playing it to his right, Scott Brown's left, and there's a guy pretty much, in behind the whole defence.
He's caught in two minds and he doesn't know what to do.
And he does nothing. He does neither.
I think he could have went closer to the guy and shot him down quicker and just took the risk. Well, that would have been me, because it looked as if he was going to take the shot quite quickly. If you understand.
In replays, it looks as if the guy is actually standing in an offside position. So I think Brown's got to go to the ball, because if the guy's in behind, he's still got to make a cross, and there's a potential of being able to clear it. But the guy gets a free shot. Ayer is nowhere near the position he should be, which is left centre back. And
he's all over the place. He seems he doesn't know what to do, and that's what I'm saying. You see El Hamilton move over, move. But it is what people are saying. It's schoolboy stuff. I mean, you would even get lambasted for that if you were doing that bad in a game of sevens or fives. I know it's a bit different, but if you were defending that bad, you'd be flagged. And rightly, it was shocking. It's
a ridiculous goal to give away, and that's the difference when you play European level versus teams in domestic football mainly. Any sort of below Rangers, is if these teams get a chance to shoot or score, they generally will. You've seen that in Copenhagen. They get 2 or 3 chances, they get 3 chances, 2 they created themselves in the game, and they took all 3 of them. You get absolutely punished at this level. These teams are, like I said, well organised, up for it. It's a big park, it's a slick park. They're all comfortable in the ball. And
they press really hard as well on the people. It seemed to be that there was always maybe 2 people on each player. I know that's not possible, but you understand what I mean. Everybody was fighting for one another. They looked like they wanted to play football, and they didn't look like the away team at one point. They looked better than us, and they looked calm and composed, pressing, and some of the passing, you've got to say, was good, and they were very, very good in the counter attack.
They were. Well, that was the warning signs for the second goal was there for the get-go. We were one slack pass away from being sort of 3-on-3 or 3-on-2 at any one time. They had 3 quick guys up. And if you've seen the highlights for their game against the Swedish champions last week, and I say Swedish champions because I can't remember how to pronounce the team's name.
Duzagats is the best I can give it.
I think both their goals came from sort of, the Swedish team getting the ball away and then breaking on them and getting in. And the guy who scored last week was really quick. So, the warning signs were there for what we were up against. So you've got to play, with a deep midfielder between the sort of a centre 2 and the centre backs, just to give you that bit more protection. But yeah, I think the goals definitely set us back for at least 20 minutes or so. We just couldn't seem to get to grips. Julian's passing was pretty poor. Would you call him? Taylor couldn't get to the byline to make a cross. Christie's. I'm loath to criticise Christie. He's not a striker. He's trying his best. He does what he would do in his normal position, and that's chase, harry. All energy. But he's
we were discussing this last night, me and my friend Martin, who were watching it, and we were saying
name check for Martin there.
Well, just as a wee side, he's getting me into trouble because I mentioned Danny in the first one. I mentioned Craig in the first one, Danny in the second one, so I have to mention him somewhere. So that's the best place I can mention him, Martin. So I've mentioned you now, so leave it at that. But he was saying how, Christie is great. He will give you a lot of energy, but and a lot of running and a lot of doing things that you don't normally associate with most players. But a lot of that running and that energy that he gives seems to cloud over the performances that he's actually given at the moment.
Yeah.
And I just think Saturday night I thought he was terrible. Every one of these corners were poor. They were either right down the keeper's throat, too high or too far, or weren't beating the first man. And last night was a carbon copy, whereby he was trying too hard to get past a player, hitting the ball one way and then go around the other, and then seemed to give up as soon as he knew he wasn't going to do it, instead of just doing the simple thing and passing.
Yeah. Aye, it's all very frustrating. So we didn't really get our first chance. And from memory, the first chance was the one where it was a kind of high cross over the top of the keeper, and El Yunusi manages to sort of bring it down with his back to goal and really quickly turn and get the shot away. And obviously it gets deflected over the top. So that seemed to give us a wee sort of bit of a spark, and it was the first sort of real moment that we looked dangerous. And then not long after that, we had the chance. I can't remember who got to the byline. May have been Taylor, and then or El Yunusi, and I think it was actually a pass for Chaman to El Yunusi. El Yunusi cuts it across, and Christie, rather than smash it with his left foot, laces in at the near post. He's tried the back heel, and he's clipped it with his heel. And I noticed in the replay that if he actually doesn't touch it, Forrest is running in free.
Well, see, I didn't know Forrest I didn't know Forrest was going to be actually making it. That's what I was thinking. I don't think he was close enough.
It would have been quite a tight angle, but he would have had a free shot at goal, that's for sure. But obviously, it touched Christie and went out for a goal kick. So I felt that was a chance that Christie should have buried. And then there was another chance, El Yunusi kind of on a run, and he's hit it past the post. And so
he didn't really get just on that one, if I remember right.
We were starting to sort of get a bit of a build up, a momentum, and I think half time probably came 5 minutes too early for us. I think if we kept going, I think we would have broke them down before half. If we went another sort of 5 minutes, but obviously it didn't happen, and we were definitely looking a much better side. Were you surprised there was no changes at half time?
Very surprised. I thought with what's at stake, given it's a one-legged tie and how poorly we started, and it's okay, you could maybe give a bit of take for how well or how better we were getting, but at the same time though, I wasn't surprised either, because it's Lennon and he has this absolute tendency to leave it, and sure as not fate, it goes from bad to complete worse, and then he brings on a striker. So any normal manager would have brought on one,
I'll get back to that because he made a comment that I need to dig him on. So the second half kicks off, and we pretty much get back into the swing it again and creating chances. Eventually the goal comes in the sort of first 10 minutes of the second half, and I mean it's Christie shooting again from distance, 20 to 25 yards out, and it's took a deflection and went in. I'm not going to criticise him. If his remit, he's been told shoot on sight, and he has got a good shot. He's got this kind of Iron Robin kind of thing going on just now, where he's cutting inside, beating a guy and then cracking the whip shot towards the sort of keeper's far post. Obviously, Iron Robin generally scored, whereas Christie's not.
Robin cuts in, and that was the thing. You never let Robin cut in on the left-hand side, because he will 9 times out of 10 score.
Yeah, but we've scored the goal. We're in the ascendancy. That's when you make the change for me. That's when you sort of tighten up at the back a wee bit. You maybe lose the guys that are on a yellow card, i.e. El Hamid, because you don't want to risk, players getting a second yellow and all of a sudden you're up against it. So that, for me, that was the moment to make the substitute. It didn't necessarily have to be a Jetty. And I don't know if you noticed when a Jetty eventually did come on, he had massive stratum around his thigh and his hamstring.
Yeah.
So,
and I did feel that he just didn't look comfortable at any point. Even as that his stance and running style when he came on, and he wasn't the same as what I thought when he came on Saturday. He looked a wee bit more up for it than he did on last night. I just didn't think he looked. He didn't look as if he looked as if he didn't want to be there. From what I saw, I thought he just went, this is just.
Well, before we get to a Jetty coming on, we would probably one of the best moves of the game, and ball gets to the byline. I think it's Forrest that cuts it back. It's either Forrest or Christie that cuts it back to Ncham, and he's absolutely. Well, he's hit it into the ground, and it's bounced up and hit the bar. I think the keeper gets a slight touch on it, and I'm thinking,
it's the right thing to do to hit it into the ground, because that's in a skiddy surface, which it would have been last night. And it's really unlucky.
It was a good move, unlucky. I thought somebody actually pulled me up on Twitter because I wrote "phew" when Christie scored, and then after when Ncham had it, I wrote "wow" nearly kind of thing, and somebody wrote, "I see you prefer Ncham, you're writing wow," and when Christie actually scored, and you're like, oh, for fuck's sake, man, really?
That's a bit pedantic.
It's very pedantic. But it's because I've been banging on about Ncham getting in the team, and it's not that I'm in Cham's fan club or anything like that. It's more, I don't have favourites. I don't look at it that way. I just look at who's playing well, who's not playing well, who should be coming in, who should come out. I don't care for names and stuff like that. I just think what's best for the team overall. And for me,
get the ball in the net, and who cares who it goes in. For
me, I think Brown's off at big time, and I don't know if this 5-month layoff is, been bad for him, I suppose, because he's been poor at the start of the season, I think. And
there is just something about him. But in there, he really just doesn't seem himself, and I think it is just that could be a part of it, maybe.
It's father time, man. It catches up on everybody. I heard somebody say when Lambert, he was faded out the team altogether, and they left with his dignity intact and his head held high for everything he'd done for the club, and there was he wasn't playing in games where he wasn't, he was a yard shy and missing tackles and, not doing the job that he used to do. People remember Lambert for the job he'd done, and I think Lennon, when he was faded at the team, it kind of came sort of in the Scottish Cup final when he gets substituted. And he kind of went in a wee huff, but as you notice, he went to Nottingham Forest after Celtic, and he pretty much chucked it 6 months later. So
he knew his legs were
his legs were gone, and it's not Brown's been a great servant. I don't think he's been the best player or the best captain we've had. I think that's just my opinion. I just think I think for a couple of years at the start of his time at Celtic, maybe a year or two when Lennon's first spell, and then a couple of years under Brendan, I think he's been excellent. But there's been 4 or 5 seasons where he's been really off it, in my opinion. And I just, for the goodwill that he's built up in the last couple of years with the trebles and and some really good performances in Europe, I just don't want to see him go out with people, because I think it happened to what's his name, Roy Aitken back in the day. He just stayed that wee bit too long.
See, the thing is as well, I think a lot of people's judgment is clouded over by how successful we have been. So they just automatically assume that Brown is this icon. And he will go down in history as one of the club's greatest serving players. But as you say, there's something that needs to be done. And whether it's, phasing him out over a couple of games and just seeing how it goes. Because if you're willing to start with no striker, then surely you're willing to let's see how it goes, because you've got nothing to lose now.
I mean, people are saying about, it's going to be hard to replace Brown. For me, I don't think we should necessarily try and replace him like for like, because I think we've got a player already in the team that can do the job he does and probably does it better already, and that's Callum McGregor.
Yeah.
I'm going to put it in context here, right? And it's, don't think I'm comparing like for like in regards to skill and quality and all that, right? But see, when you look at the Barcelona team, sort of mid-2000s, you had Carlos Puyol, who was just an absolute warrior as a captain, a defender. He was the kind of guy who would just be in people's faces. He'd be, he'd be fighting for everything. Scott Brown is our Carlos Puyol, if you want, right? But when he moved on and his time came, the armband went to Xavi. And Xavi's a totally different character. He led by the way he played. He never gave the ball away, constantly on the front foot, intercepting. He was just a brilliant, brilliant football player, one of the best midfielders ever. Well, our version of that, obviously much scaled down, is Callum McGregor in regards to the type of player and probably character he is. He's not a in-your-face type of guy, but he's no scared to get stuck in, and that's, it doesn't necessarily, when the, would you call him Ramos, when he chucks it with Madrid, they're never going to find another Ramos. You just have to find a guy who can lead the team in a different way.
Exactly. I mean, that is a very good context and way to put it as well, because I think to find a Brown, and as you say, is going to be nigh on impossible. People were kind of labelling John McGinn as this next big replacement. That never happened, so we just move on from it. But it's back to what we were saying a couple of weeks ago. You're never going to replace them like for like. There's no point in looking at it. It should just be when Brown retires, there's something that needs to be filled in respect of another player needs to come in, and whether or not they're as good or whether or not they're the same mould and style, well, we just get on with it, essentially.
Yeah, so we had a goal chopped off. Was it El Yunusi? Brilliant finish, good ball through. Was he onside or offside?
It's clearly onside for me.
You think?
I think he was, just when I've looked at it a couple of times. That's what I thought.
I'd love to see the VAR kind of offside line.
Oh, they're letting.
I think just because he's leaning forward, it's hard. I mean, let's be honest. The striker's supposed to get the benefit of the doubt. They never do, to be honest.
No.
The linesman always gives it for the defender because it's an easier,
It's a get out clause.
It's a get out clause. The flag goes up and and then they can say, well, he put it in the net because before he stopped playing, the keeper's not really, going for it type thing, so they can get away with it. So for me, that's a massive disappointment, because I think if we ever went ahead in the game, I think it's very unlikely we would have lost the game, because I just think because we were pressing for a goal, we left ourselves a wee bit exposed. So the goal comes from a pass towards El Yunusi, and I noticed a few times the ball was getting away from certain players just because of the rain, and before he sort of tries to win it back, the guy's absolutely hoofed it up the park, a big swinging punt. Mm-hmm. And just as it's bouncing is exactly when El Hamid should have met it, and he doesn't. He lets it bounce across him, and then I'll let you describe the rest.
See, I mean, as you say, I was expecting him to make a tackle as soon as he missed that opportunity, or try to kind of stand him up and push him as much out to the maybe the corner, to push out for a corner as much. But the most feeble attempt at a tackle you'll ever see, I think, and then it just gets away from him, and then he gives up. And people have been saying, they blame the goalie for it. I don't think necessarily you can blame the goalie for that, because the goalie's done the best that he can do. And I think El Hamid's to blame for that wholeheartedly, but should have commanded it a lot earlier than what it was. And when that went in, you just knew that we were never going to score again. And I just felt that was it. You could have kept playing for weeks on end, and we would never have scored.
Yeah,
I think. But what can you say about it? It was just it was shocking from start to finish. There was bits in between. There was peaks and troughs, but you've got to be winning those types of games. And I don't care what anybody says that. Or people will blame the board. I've had people saying, there needs to be wholehearted changes, which might need to be the case. I can't see it though. We have spent money. We've got £3.5 million strikers on the bench. We had a £5 million that could have probably started or had the last 30 minutes and not just 15 minutes when it went to pot. And I think the blame of this has got to lie with Lennon, who seems to be not learning from his mistakes. We have Cluj, we have Copenhagen, Ferencváros now, and Rangers. I was
having a look back at the Copenhagen game. He dropped in Cham for the second leg for Brown, who was half fit, and we lost the midfield battle big time. Mm-hmm. The boy, what was his name again? Zuko or something, the guys, I can't remember, but he was a four-letter name. But he was 31-year-old central midfielder, and he absolutely ran the show, and Brown was nowhere. But Brown was half fit, he shouldn't have been on the park. And then he's obviously what you said, Cal McGregor last year at left back, left Bolingoli, new £3 million left back, and Julian centre back, £7 million, both left on the bench. So there's £10 million worth of defenders on the bench last year, and then last night he's left £8 million on the bench with Klimality and Ajeti. Now, Lennon said that in the press conference that we were good control of the game, we were making chances, and I was ready to make the substitute, and then they scored. These things happen. And I'm thinking, bullshit, you weren't ready to make it. You were going to just try and see it as long as possible and hope for the best.
And if possible, take extra time, to be honest. Because I think when Lennon was never going to make the substitute when it needed to be done, and to bring him on with 15 minutes to go and expect if he's saying a half fit Ariete to come on and change it. Now, if you're Klimala in that respect, would you want to be at the club again? Because if a manager said that to me, so I don't think you're good enough for a second qualifying in which, with respect to Ferencváros, we should be winning given the money that we are spending.
Yeah, I think to say Klimala wasn't match fit is just coded word for saying I don't actually think he's good enough.
But
do you know what I'm going to say? For what I've seen of Klimala in very small, I don't know if he is good enough. I don't know if he's ever going to be good enough. But that's not the point. The point is he had him on the bench. He should have started. If he thinks he's no match fit, he should get 45 minutes out of both of them, or at least an hour out of Klimala and half an hour out of Ajeti. So you're playing with a striker, and if Ajeti or one of them, if the second guy comes off injured, then you've still got another couple of subs to make where you can readjust it and maybe at that point put Christie up front or Forrest up front or somebody else, to fill in. But by that time, a natural striker would have put some of the chances away. The amount of cutbacks that was made for a striker. I mean, Eddie would have probably scored 2 or 3 last night, but it's guesswork, I suppose. But
to say that Klimala wouldn't have scored, I mean, Klimala's went like this lockdown. He was skinny, built at a fiver, but he's came back and he's bulked up a bit. So he's done what he thought was right, and okay, it might never be good, but you've got to give these people a chance. But it's back to but why did they buy him in the first place then? If he thought he wasn't going to be good enough for a second qualifying round in the Champions League, which, as I say, we should be winning.
Well, he wasn't even the first choice. There was another guy, and I'm sure it may have been a guy for Budapest or something, or I think it was Bratislava. There was a guy. There was a guy we were looking at Bratislava who was hovering about the 5 or 6 million mark, and lo and behold, we end up with a guy half his.
Andrew Sporar, who went to Sporting
something like that. Aye, so we end up getting the guy. It's half the price, in true Celtic fashion. So
that's another thing you could come on. I mean, the recruitment over the last few years has been shocking.
Yeah, we touched on that last week. We were basically saying that first, all these guys around about the 1 to 2 million mark. Bio, Bangura way back in the day. Klimala, Soro, Shved. Before we mentioned Shved had left last week actually. Amido Baldi. So all these 2 million hovering around about the 2 million mark. It's not good enough. The chances of ever unveiling another Van Dijk at 2.8 million is a once in a lifetime signing. Lennon said it himself when he made that signing that he couldn't believe he was the only one watching him. So.
For every Edward or Van Dijk that we get, we seem to get 15 Amido Baldis. It's just like it's never a consistent chain of decent players. There's never just like a couple of good players every season. It's always just once, as I say, in a lifetime. And there is no way we're going to get £2.8 million players in this market now. No chance.
I was listening to my good friends on Celtic Underground last night who were having an absolute meltdown, pretty much, because they done it. At least we've gave ourselves 24 hours to digest it. They went on 20 minutes after it. But Harry Brady counted up a load of these guys that we've signed over the last 2 or 3 years that could leave the club tomorrow and you would never miss them, and it amounted to somewhere in the region of £18 million spent, and you're like, that could have been spent on another 6 million centre half, another £5 or £6 million central midfielder to replace Brown long term, if that's the type of player you want to have in there, and then maybe another striker, at a good level, rather than this faffing about for 6 or 7 players around about the 2 million mark, because it's just money down the drain. It's an absolute shit show, and I'm glad to see that we are looking at more in this transfer window. At least we're looking at players of a higher standard. Guys like Turnbull who we've signed today, you're never going to pay way over the odds for a guy for Scotland, because Motherwell and Hearts and Aberdeen they can't justify the kind of fees, because they generally don't sell players for that kind of money ever. Mm-hmm. I think we've just smashed Motherwell's transfer record. I think we double what we paid for Phil O'Donnell. That's how often they sell players worth £2 million, one every 25 year.
Which I find weird because obviously James McFadden went to Everton, and I was just shocked that hadn't already been beaten by Everton.
The Phil O'Donnell one was still the highest until today.
So that was 2.75 million, wasn't it? If my memory serves me.
No, 1.75.
Oh, was it 1.7? Right.
That was at his debut. God rest him. So game's over. We're out of Champions League, and then Lennon goes into meltdown mode in his press conference.
I mean, that is what he was thinking, to effectively throw the players under the bus, and to come out with comments of saying, if players don't want to be here, that is not the time to say it. I'm sorry.
And then you've got Scott Brown in an interview not long after basically saying, well, I've not heard any of the players that want to leave.
Now, then that screams to me, has someone lost the dressing room, and that's someone being Lennon? And
it's one of these sort of generic phrases that football fans use, or pundits use. He's lost the dressing room, but has he actually lost the dressing room? Has the players looking at Lennon and the coaching and stuff and thinking, this isn't what I signed up for? I don't know. I'm no in there. I don't know how good the coaching is or not. Apparently, John Kennedy is a really good coach. I don't know much about the guy Strachan that's come in.
I don't like the way that Lennon sits there with about 2 minutes to go, and he's sitting in the chair as if, this is it. He should be trying to motivate, and this is only my opinion, and people will say, but management styles and whatever, okay, but with what's on the line and the amount of riches that the Champions League come, okay, we might not have got there, but to get to the next round at least, he should be getting out there and motivating them a wee bit better than what he's just sitting there. And I think you put a picture on Twitter the day, and the three of them are just sitting there. They look clueless, absolutely clueless.
Lennon, it's 93 minutes and 30 seconds on the clock. Lennon's he's sitting there with his hands on his head. John Kennedy's sitting, arms folded, and Strachan's doing a crossword. And that's what it looked like.
To be fair, I mean, I'd love to know what these guys are writing down. If they would just mirror what the fans were saying. I would love to just get into the notes of them someday.
I made a comment on Twitter about 85 minutes saying, has Julian been put up front yet? And sure enough, about a minute later, he get put up front. But I'm thinking to myself, I think we've got 5 subs we're allowed to use in Europe just for this season. We've made 2 subs. So Frimpong came on and Ajeti came on. We've still got another striker on the bench. Why not just take take Brown off and put Klimality on, because Brown's not going to score. It's unlikely.
On the yellow card as well.
It takes somebody off for a deeper position. We've got to go for it. We're out anyway, so you may as well go for it. But why put? It's that whole, if I stick the big defender up, we might get a knock on or something. But they were winning everything in the air pretty much anyway, so there was never real much chance of scoring for. It was always going to have to come for a shot, a deflection, getting in behind, a cutback, something. It was never going to be a big long punt into the box. So it just seemed clueless. We looked bereft of ideas. And see, to be honest, it's kind of been coming because we were bereft of ideas against Kilmarnock. We had obviously made a lot more chances against Dundee United, but we were a bit disjointed in the midfield. We had Christie shooting once every 3 minutes, for distance.
And some of the shots were closer to Dens Park than they were at the actual Tannadice goal. Yeah. At the shed end. And he had a good shot in the 45th minute, and then I think in the 65th minute it just ballooned over the Tannadice Street. It's just. Yeah. But,
so there's some things I want to talk about, but they're kind of covered in some of the questions that have come in. I put a tweet out basically saying, look, send a question or even just a general rant into my DMs, and I'll cover it. So I've got one here for Gaz1888. He's quite long-winded, but I'll work my way through it. So he's like, how's Trick Stevie? Nobody ever calls me Stevie.
Stevie.
No, yeah. Aye. That was an absolute shit show from top to bottom last night, which begs the question, do we just have a CL marketing team rather than a CL football team? It's just seems like take from fans, but get very little back. People will say we've spent X amount, but it doesn't matter a fuck if these players don't play. We'll also say, for me, that was 100% on Neil Lennon last night. Shocking team selection and then slaughter the players who don't want to be there, but plays them anyway. He had months to sort that. Sorry for a rant. Stay safe, mate. Cheers for the... It was a bit of a rant, but he's right. He's, if Lennon gets several players that have came to him and said, I don't want to be there, then surely the time to make that comment is maybe when Bolly is, to take maybe the attention away from the team having to get 2 games postponed. Right. Maybe it's that point, and he just comes out and says, listen, we're going to be looking for new transfers. There's some players that don't want to be here, and we're going to look to move them on for the best price, but they're not leaving, for blah, blah, blah. Right. And it would have shown up in his selections if he had the balls to sort of not pick them, but to pick them, because we think we know who they are, and then throw them under the bus because they don't perform for you or they don't get you the result that you want, then for me it's weak management for me.
I'd be tending to agree. I mean, he's hit every point in the head that I think that as I've said earlier, it was totally wrong to do that. He was the one that picked the team, played a few of them out of position, if truth be told, and it didn't work. But he never learns, and he has his own management style. Other people will have it. Rodgers had his, Dyla had his, but he never seems to learn from his mistakes. And I just think that this is history repeating itself, certainly with the last season. Cluj, we were all feeling the same, thinking that was a game we should have won. Copenhagen, a game we should have won. But these are games that probably would have been won, not with ease or anything, we would have had to falter away, but with maybe a manager that actually plays players in the right position and spends money and actually plays the players that he spent the money on. And yeah. I
find that weird, buying players for a certain value and then not playing them.
Anywhere else that would be saying, well, why are you not playing them? If they're so if people are so concerned about, the market's terrible for us, we have to constantly find these players and blah blah blah. Well, if you're going to pay the money, which we have been, why don't you play them? But this could get back to recruitment and how poor it's been over the few years, and we could be from here to doomsday talking about how poor some of the recruitment's been.
Do you know what? I don't necessarily think a lot of the recruitment's been that bad. I think we do have a good team, but right now I feel as if we're poorly coached.
Well, I think yeah, that's a big part of it, but I think also as well, if we're wanting to be this Champions League team, which if anybody thinks we are even anywhere close to that, they're absolute la la land.
We've been in the Champions League 4 times since Gordon Strachan's last season.
Exactly.
Which is what, 12 years, 11 years?
Yes.
2009 he left.
Yeah, so 12 years will be coming up.
So we've been in the Champions League 4 times since then, and we've been in it twice in the last 7. We're not a Champions League team.
No, but people seem to have this. You'll see it yourself on Twitter. People say, we're a Champions, and we try to sell this dream to players about how they will get to the Champions League, and we'll sell you on. That's where you'll be, and that's where your market is. And it's not for me. We're a Europa League team at best, but I believe we should be competing to always at least get through the stages of the Europa League, because I think we do have that team that can do that, but that would then get back to you with being the poorly coached. And for me, last night was the straw that broke the camel's back for me with Lennon, and he's not the man for the job for me.
I mean, the excuse comes out about, it's difficult to get players, and we're up against it, and we don't get much time as a pre-season because you're straight into the qualifiers, and you're like, well, Hungary and Romania and Slovenia and Poland and Denmark and fucking Sweden, they're not exactly leagues that people are rushing to go and play in, and I guarantee they're not getting paid anywhere near the kind of salaries that we pay. I get that we're probably paying a premium on some of the players that we get, but some of these clubs are paying a premium to get players to go there as well. There's the last time Celtic went out a qualifier to a team with a bigger budget than us was Arsenal in 2009.
Yeah.
You know, since then we have lost under Mowbray and Lennon. You know, we have lost. Well, Mowbray got to the Europa League, to be fair, but afterwards when but since then we've went out to Braga, Utrecht. Then we went out to Sion. We got a reprieve and back in. Then we had a Champions League and a good run the last 16. Then we got in the Champions League again the year after, but won one game at 6 and get pumped in the rest. Then we had the 2 years of Dyla, where we went out to Legia, got a reprieve, lost to Maribor at home. Then the year after we lose to Malmo after being 2-0 up in the first 10 minutes. We eventually go out 4-3 in aggregate. And then obviously we went out to Athens, who's probably been about the toughest and closest to us in finances. But that was at a point where Rodgers had Boyata and Dembele pretty much thrown the toys at the pram. And, you know, we missed out in McGinn and there was a whole load of shit going on in the background. You know, and then last year we got to Cluj, and then this year we got to Ferencváros. So on average, we're going out to teams with about a quarter or a third of the budget that we keep or we get on average, and that's not even before you count getting to the Champions League. The whole thing about I seen it again today in the news and some of the mainstream stuff, and it was like Celtic lose out in £30 million Champions League. You can't. We don't lose out. We don't lose out in it because we don't get it. We very rarely ever get it. If we get it, it's a bonus, and it should always be treated as a bonus. You know, but this whole thing about, we didn't get Champions League, so we need to balance the books, so let's get rid of our best players and then sign shite to replace them. There's only so far you can get with that before the teams run about you and your own domestic league start catching you. So,
but it seems to be a case of history repeating itself as well, because there's only so much that we as fans can put up with that, because we'll not demand, but with the amount of money that we are spending right now in uncertain times, you expect there to be at least a bit more preparation. We knew we needed a defender, and we still haven't got a defender in, essentially.
We've been here since, I don't know, since Rodgers came in. We went into qualifiers with Owen O'Connell and Effie Ambrose, you know, away to Astana. And then we had Sadie Yanko at fullback away to Beersheva. And then the year after, we're in with Jack Henry and fucking, you know, near Beaton and Ayer playing it. Ayer was literally just coming into the team, and he's playing centre back and with Beaton, and it was an absolute shit show away to Astana. So, you know, like you said, it's history repeating itself. It's, you know, we keep making the same mistakes over and over, but that's got to come not just that. But that's not just a Lennon thing. That's been a club thing. And I've heard
it goes above Lennon there, then, in my opinion, because this is, as I've said as well, it's a constant gamble of thinking we'll just get by, and then we sign some unknown at the last minute that will just get us by to Europa League or Champions League or whatever it would be. And everybody just seems to, you know, certainly at the top, you know, it seems to be a case of almost being this fantasy. We have to be debt free. And I'm not saying being debt free isn't great, and I'm glad we are in a sustainable business model. But if they're going to market us and sell players this stream, there needs to be that outlay, and that preparation needs to be that the bonuses are there. Why can't we do it? You know, this keeps failing. There needs to be changes, and I think, you know, that we could be here all night with regards to, you know, Mr. Law and whoever, but at the same time, Law's not going to leave Celtic. He isn't. You know, people think, he'll leave, but he's happy to collect his 2.3 million paycheck at the end of the year.
Well,
or 3.2, sorry, it might be 3.2, I can't remember.
If you go to a player like Chris Jullien or Christopher Ayer or Edward or Incham and you say, listen, you know, we can give you the platform. You know, we're Celtic, we get 60,000 season ticket holders or 53,000 season ticket holders, 60,000 every week or every second week. You come here, you win trophies or compete for the league, win trophies, playing cup finals. You know, you're playing next door to the biggest transfer market in the world, which is the English Premier League, by far the biggest in regards to transfer fees and wages. You're going to be showcased on British TV most weekends, and you're going to play in Europe, hopefully the Champions League, but at worst you're going to be in the Europa League. So come here, do a couple of years, and then you're free to go, and we'll hopefully sell you for more. And you obviously do well at it as well. So see, when you sell the club and as your remit, and that's the remit, you get these players in the door on, because Scotland, let's be fair, Scottish Premier League, or Scottish Premiership, sorry, isn't an attractive league, So don't complain when these guys turn around and say, I've done 2 years, my agent's telling me there's 40, 50 grand on the table down the road at, Burnley or Newcastle or whatever. Don't be surprised when they turn around and say, I want to go. And don't start throwing them under the bus because it doesn't suit your agenda or suit your... This is a model. Just because Neil Lennon came to Celtic back in the time when, European football was pretty even across the board, and you could pretty much compete with most teams, and Scottish Premiership was of a better level, and, the really strong Rangers at the time. And players were, we had a pretty settled team for about 3-4 years, a big hitters on big wages. Football's changed from the, players want to play in one of the big 5 leagues. So
nobody wants to come up here and play against Ross County. Nobody says that to their agent, get me up there to play against Ross County. No. Nobody at all. But I think though there needs to be changes, and I'm not saying it needs to just be at Lennon, no. But I do believe that if Lennon can't coach the players, then we need to have a look at higher above, because in my opinion they will just go with a cheap option again and again and again, and I think they are starting to play a lot on the fans' loyalty here.
Yeah.
And that's a wrong thing to do, because there's only so long that will go on for before they will just go, well, I'm no paying for that, because it's getting frustrating to lose to teams like Ferencváros and Cluj and Copenhagen, because we have the bigger budgets. I'm not saying we should go out and spend 30 million, but we should be beating them.
I had a bit of a rant tweet after the Athens game, and I think it's still in my timeline somewhere, where I wrote that Celtic have got a Champions League manager, a Europa League team, and an SPFL board.
Aye. That's weird. I actually remember that tweet. I actually remember that now.
Now, people can argue whether Brendan Rodgers was a Champions League manager or not. That's another argument. But the point was, we've got a top class manager, despite what people might still think him. He did get us into our last 2 Champions Leagues, and then our last 32 Europa League twice. He was a really good manager for us, despite what he done in the end. You can't deny that.
I would agree with that wholeheartedly.
And Lennon has had some good times at Celtic, but he's also had some shit shows as well, in Europe. So
the thing is, as well, with Lennon, if we go on to win the league, which we all hope and pray for because of the season it is, it's going to paper over the cracks of what happened.
Tens became the noose round the club's neck, I think.
Aye. And it's going to... Ayer and Edward and Sham do not give a shit about the team. They really don't. As you say, their agent's going to be on at the phone, and I think there's a tweet going about now from the same Sky journalist that was reporting about Ajeti, saying that the representatives of Ayer and Sham have asked for valuations from Celtic.
Yeah,
well,
I've seen that.
Well, that... I would say Lennon's caused that himself.
But listen, if they guys don't already know what their valuations are, I think it's just I've no doubt that that's what's going on in the background, and I wouldn't be surprised to see at least 2 or 3 go. I wouldn't be surprised if we see 2 or 3 come in as well, to try and replace them. I don't have any doubts in that. I do think that we'll try and sign players, but see if they want to go. And it goes for Edward as well, because let's be honest, Edward, he's getting raked in the ankles every week. He's getting no protection for refs. The guys are getting away with 2 or 3 times before they even see a yellow card. He's not going to be playing Champions League football at Celtic at any point in his career. Why would he stay? Do you want to stay for 10 in a row? Hold on, I'm getting 70 grand a week down the road. Nah, it's cool, mate. I think I'll go to the 70 grand a week and I'll fight relegation with Aston Villa. I don't give a fuck. And that's the way it is, because he knows he knows if he goes to a Villa and does well at a club like that, I'm picking Villa because they've been linked with him.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to end up at a bigger stage again because they very rarely players. Tierney's been the exception where he goes, straight to what would be seen as a top 4, top 6 club in Arsenal. So, I thought one of the big 6 anyway for England.
The big hitters.
Usually the path is at Southampton and then on to the next. But anyway, I'm going to get back to some questions here. So I've got a question in for a guy. His name says Box Cutter, but he's probably got the worst. Now, I mean, I thought Lasagna Knees last week was a pretty poor Twitter handle name, but this guy, his Twitter handle name is @snotbubbles4, which just paints a terrible picture in my mind, to be honest. So
yeah, I think I'm scared going to bed tonight with that in my head.
So he's pretty straightforward, three line tweet. He just wrote, win or lose 10. Is this the season Lenny and Wallwell? I think what he means is this the last dance. He's wrote here, the last dance. Right. Lenny and Wallwell's last dance. I think so. I mean, whether I've got a feeling that Wallwell will leave, or he'll still be within the club, but I think he'll step down. He's near mid. I think he's about 63, 64 now. He's been at the club since 2004. Well, I think he was kind of coming in the door when we were at Seville for the final. Yeah,
I think certainly the murmurs.
He was getting brought in because the wage bill was massive and the turnover was roughly what the wages were. So he came in around about that time. So in effect, his first season was the only season in his whole tenure that we've won a game after Christmas in Europe. And that was against Barcelona. We won 2 that year. We beat some team for the Czech Republic, I think, and then we beat Barcelona and made then we made the quarter. We made the quarters against Villarreal. Sorry, and ever since then we've never won a 2-legged tie after Christmas. And I find that was a stat I seen not that long ago, and I just couldn't get my head around it, to be honest. And then when you think about it, you're like, fuck, here we have.
The thing is with Lowe, I think he has outstayed his welcome. He's a bit like Arsene Wenger at Arsenal. He has totally outstayed his welcome. But with the business model and that we have, it is suited for him perfectly because that's his kind of remit. I just don't think he's the man to lead us forward because I think we need new ideas. We need new young ideas in that boardroom.
Fresh blood.
Sorry?
Fresh blood. Fresh ideas.
Fresh blood and fresh ideas, and not people like Peter Law or Dermot Desmond. I think to a certain extent, because I think he's not there at any he's not there at any of the weird games. He's just there collecting his dividends at the end of the year. And I just think we need a wholehearted change. And the fact we went again for Lennon, as I'm sure you were at the start, I was unhappy. I mean, the way they done that, and that still gets to me, the way they appointed him apparently, and they said to him in the showers and the job's yours.
But he didn't accept it for another week. It was almost as if they just thought he was going to turn around and say, aye, cool, excellent.
What business would have done that, or what club would have done that on the verge of what lunacy? It's absolute lunacy. And Lennon was always going to be the cheap option. I mean, there was so many names going on. I mean, I think at one point Mourinho might have been linked. And there was no way that Mourinho was going to come to Parkhead. There was no way. Okay, everybody could think, oh, well, it was great. But I think we all kind of knew at the back of our minds, if we won the treble, Lennon was getting the job. Because it's the cheap option, it keeps the wage bill down, and everybody's happy, and there's no debt there, and there's no outlay, and everything is just linked towards keeping costs down, when we should be trying to, make the club progress in Europe as well as being dominant in Scotland.
Well, I was going to say when Rodgers, or whether it was being murmured about the time when Rodgers was going to be leaving, and then obviously he did leave, I put out 3 suggestions that pretty much everybody tried, apart from a couple, apart from one that everybody tried to kibosh a wee bit, and it was the Marco Rose was the name I had, obviously Salzburg manager at the time. I think he's at Gladbach now. He was somebody I put a name forward for The other was Philip Koku, who had not long left Turkey, but he had a really good spell at PSV. And another name I put forward was Lopetegui, who was sacked about 4 or 5 months earlier by Real Madrid. Now, people can laugh and go, Real Madrid, as if he's going to take that job. But he's turned up in Seville. He's lost 15 players and he brought in 14 and still went on to win the Europa League. You know, but the guy's a proper coach. You know, I think he used to do the Spain under 21s, and then he got the Spain main team, and then that's when he obviously took the Real Madrid job. Well, he was ready to go to the World Cup and get sacked, and it all just went tits up for him. So it was just more Celtic could be somewhere he could rebuild his career for 2 years and do a good job, you know, in Europe and stuff. But as you say, you know, we went for the guy that knows the club, knows the city, can spot a player, you know.
AKA cheap option, you know.
There's got to be more to signing players than thinking, you know, I can spot a player here, you know. It's
but as you say, it's proper coaching as well that's needed, you know. And I do think Damien Duff's a big loss in that dressing room.
I think so as well.
Because I think losing him, although you might not say it, and you know, it's the players that play on the pitch and blah blah blah, he's a big loss, and I'm not too certain this Gavin Strachan at the moment, you know. But as I say, Peterborough, I think we should be aiming a wee bit better than Peterborough, and there could also be the fact that, well, son of Gordon Strachan, cheap option brought in by, well, not cheap option, but like connection. You could be here all day saying, jobs for the boys and favours for people, you know. Well,
that leads me on to my next question. I'm going to answer it first, and then I'll let you have your go. So this came from Martin Wilmot at M Wilmot 68. He's got 10 years on me if I'm judging by that.
And a better Twitter name.
Aye, and a better Twitter name. So he's wrote, question for your podcast. It's pretty simple. You are the CEO. What do you do? Well, if I was the CEO of Celtic watching that last night, I wouldn't have sacked him today because obviously we had a new player coming in, but I would have sacked him tomorrow. And I think I'd have been justified for it because it's 2 years running. It's one of his main KPIs, as we like to say in the business world. It's
it's what you're judged on.
It's what you're judged on. You know, one Champions League campaign is the equivalent of winning the Scottish Premiership 8 times monetary wise. You know, it's a massive injection of cash into the club. You're seeded all the way through. You're coming up against teams with a third or a quarter of your budget. There's no excuses. And for me, what I would do next would depend on the decision I'd be making at the end of the season. So if I'm leaving at the end of the season, then I don't see the point in appointing somebody long term, because the next guy to take over might not necessarily see eye to eye with that person. So I would probably let Kennedy run with it and tell him to, you know, bring somebody in with experience to sort of be by his side just to bounce off it. But for that, but if I was CEO, one thing I would do as a CEO, I would employ a sporting director. Basically, say this is your wage bill. The club's average turnover is around about 80 million, so we're going to try and operate around about 50% mark in player wages. Like, you know, that's the kind of what people say most clubs should be operating around about. You know, here's 5 million in a transfer budget out of the pot, but whatever you sell, you can use. So if you get somebody sold at, you know, Edward at 30 million, you can use that 30 million to rebuild the squad. And I'd make sure there's a proper fucking scouting network in, proper analytics, scouting, nutritionists. I don't know if all of this is at the club, but I'd like to think I would want the best that I could afford. Do we have the best coaches? Do we have the best manager we can afford? If Lennon's sacked tomorrow, where's he going to get a job? That's my question to you.
Yeah, well, I don't think he has one. I don't think he would be. I mean, he might get another job in Scotland, but it certainly will not be a Hibs. It'll be a lower rate club, I think.
He's not getting a championship job. He's not getting I think he's burned in England. He's seen as a bit of a dinosaur type manager. You know, it's all about motivation and whatever. But
Well, I think it was when he left Hibs and Paul Heckingbottom was brought in. I think it was Paul Hanlon, who I think was the captain at the time or was vice captain, says that the change from Heckingbottom to Lennon was night and day with regards to the technology that was brought in. You know, it just backs up what you said. Like, it was totally a very old style management. But that's the same with managers. Managers change all the time as well. The days of Fergie and launching boots at Beckham are long gone.
yes,
You know, they're not going to win titles. You know, and that's, you know, they're not going to win leagues. In Scotland they might, but those days are long gone. I'm sorry, but they are. And it's now back to coaching and talking about formations and tactics and analytics and touches and
no stones unturned. Basically,
exactly.
every match, every opponent. Now, one thing I noticed, and I don't know if you noticed it yourself on Saturday when the full-time whistle went against Dundee United. Now that new handshake we've got, where you just sort of clench fist and touch the other guy's clenched fists, you know, it's like almost like a fist pump type thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, full-time whistle goes, Lennon turns to Stratton, fist pump. I think Stevie Woods possibly, fist pump. And then he goes up to Kennedy and he puts his both hands on his face and he's right in his face as if, you know, he's ready to give him a big kiss. And to me, that told me that the decisions to make in regards to substitutes and switching the formation, which led to the goal within 5 or 10 minutes of these subs being made, was a Kennedy decision. That's what I read for that. It was almost as if to say, you know, you're fucking genius. You know, you made that happen for us. That's the way I read that. Well, I don't know if you would think different.
I noticed it. Yeah. I did think it was just a case of because he's assistant manager that thank fuck we got that. You know, and they do have a close relationship. But you do see it at Parkhead, and certainly when we were allowed to go, that Kennedy's more the one out in the dugout, shouting out and giving instructions. It's almost as if, the way I look at it, Lennon is guiding him and breeding him into a manager who possibly will become the next Celtic manager and possibly is the next cheap option. Yeah. And it just rolls on and on and on. That's the way I see it.
Yeah. Well,
because I hope it does. I hope that's not what it is. And I've got every level of sympathy for John Kennedy. I thought he was going to be a great defender until some Romanian player ended his career badly, which was a shocking tackle. But there's only so much you can give if the quality's not there, in my opinion. I don't think he's a manager. That's my opinion.
Well, the next question
we should be looking at.
The next Twitter question is about a manager potentially, if it was ever to come off. This is one of my favourite names on Twitter handles. It's no Anoni on Anonu. And that's Darren Conway 16. So Darren, he likes to have a wee rant privately with me sometimes on Celtic results. But he's wrote here, question for the podcast, serious question. Should we be looking at Jack Ross as manager? I know Lawrence on the By the Minute Celtic, he loves Jack Ross and he's been pitching for Jack Ross for a couple of years, to be fair.
Well,
but Lawrence isn't on this podcast, so I'd like to hear your thoughts.
I'm a big fan of Jack Ross. Always have been since on 2 occasions when he came with Alloa on the first occasion and then St Mirren on the second occasion in both cups.
Yeah.
He certainly gave us a game and had taught his teams and got his team tactically well against us. And to be fair, you've got to give him a bit of credit there, because that was 2 teams that were financially and the talent as well was far outweighing what they had. And he had them set up pretty well. And certainly with the St Mirren one, gave us a fright.
Yeah.
I'm impressed with the job he's doing at Hibs. Yes, I am.
Apparently he's got the third highest amount of points since he took over that job, behind Celtic and Rangers.
He's ever since some season into it. It was like some stat after them. I do like him. Would
Don't sit in the fence.
no the
Would you have
question
him?
question is though, I would have him, but I don't know what he would be like with a budget, and that's the only thing that holds me back.
Yeah.
I do like him. I think he would play very good football, but I don't know what he'd be like with a budget, and that's the biggest test for me. But at the same time, why not? I mean, we go with Lennon, so why not go with Jack Ross? So yeah. And the question to it's no one only on and on out. Aye, it's definitely I would take him.
You
If
would
it
take
was
him.
the next person, aye, why not?
Personally, I don't think I would take him. I think Celtic need to be shopping at a higher market for guys who have proven with teams of a similar sort of size to us, or maybe, a Copenhagen type size club that have done well in Europe over maybe 2 or 3 times over a 5-year period, won leagues. I think that's the type of manager we should be looking at. We should be scouring Europe. We can't be limiting ourselves to Scotland and Irish people,
You see, the thing is, I totally agree with that.
You start to run out of Irish good managers, I think, before you start getting down to Michael O'Neill and I'm not saying Michael O'Neill's done a great job in the north of Ireland. But obviously he's at Stoke. But you're moving into. I mean, if you're talking Irish guys, I mean, do you want a Roy Keane? I think Roy Keane's proven that he can't manage players who are not up to his standards.
Yeah, he thinks that everything has got to be of a Fergie standard, and
yes,
it's not going to be a Fergie standard. So no way would I want Roy Keane.
I think it's a Roy Keane standard, to be honest. So
you listen to him on Sky Sports, he just goes off in one. You really just zone out when he talks. I wouldn't want him. I totally agree with what you're saying with regards to we should be scouring Europe for managers, but with the management team above, they're never going to do that, because a management team, if they were to come in from a Marco Rose type or your man, I can't pronounce his name, the man from Madrid, they're going to demand things that would allow us to probably make progress in Europe. And the Celtic board's going to go, five, right? Chase yourself. And
well, when we brought in Rodgers, as far as I'm aware, that was a Dermot Desmond deal. That was probably made on the golf course. Coming manage Celtic, $2.5 million a year, whatever it was. You notice for about 18 months of that, maybe nearly 2 years of that period, Wallwell was completely out of the picture. No, it did all start to unravel a wee bit when a couple of players wanted to leave, i.e. Dembele, Boyata, and then obviously we faffed about with the McGinn deal, and that's when it all started to unravel. But we had a guy who he'd managed Liverpool, managed at a high, really high level. He had instant respect for the players. Apparently his coaching was outstanding. His transfers, not so much, but he turned a squad underperforming into an invincible, unbeaten team. That's the kind of levels we should be looking at, is guys who, operate at a higher level. They just have a higher demand.
The thing is as well, you're right with it was a Dermot Desmond deal. There's no way we would pay that just on the basis of what we get in. But to just say, it'll do for 2 years and then we go back to cheap wage, it's just as if to say, we'll feel like it's when we feel like it. That's not the way to make progress as a club. That's not at all.
Well, it buys into the theory that, Rangers looked as if they'd caught us, even though they were just coming up for the league below and beat us in the semi-final. So we need to try and blow them out the water. We blew them out the water for 2 years. We're that far enough ahead. We don't need to be paying $2.5 million for a manager. So let's get somebody in. And it's that whole theory that the Celtic board are happy to be best in Scotland, but only just.
Aye, and I've been always of the opinion. See, if the shoe was on the other foot, they would be streets ahead.
Yeah.
They would be streets ahead, and I don't like saying it, but I think it's true, and I think most people would agree with me on that.
Well, Draco James keeps going on about how Rangers have adopted all the analytics and sports science that the likes of Liverpool are doing. They've adopted that big time, whereas Celtic seem to have kind of fell away from it a wee bit. So the next question from Paul T 1967 at Crabbit Cabby. So don't ever get into his taxi. So
Now we're without mask.
So
anyway.
obviously the question went out was, send us a question. So he's wrote here, how long have you got? Never mind last night. It should be a catalyst for stop. Have a root and branch review of the whole football infrastructure. We should have the best from top to bottom. And that pretty much just covers what we've just said there. We should have the best coaches. Is Darren O'Dea and Stephen McManus the best coaches we can afford for the level below? Mm-hmm. I'm not so sure. I don't know how good they are as coaches or not, but I don't see many players coming through. So
the thing is, it's back to the jobs for the boys. It's back to that, because Dan O'Dea, an okay player, done his job, done job at Dundee, but I don't think he's a great coach. He's certainly not a great commentator.
No, he was co-commentating last night.
Jesus God, it was dreadful.
I think you said at 92 minutes, Celtic just need to stay patient and keep passing the ball.
A chance will come. My God.
It never came.
I hope he doesn't get the job. Jesus, if that's his mantra. No, I think there's definitely better coaches out there that could be operating, and we just don't want to go for them. It is just how much can we keep the cost down? But as you say, by keeping just ahead of Rangers, it's one-upmanship. That's all it is. It's one-upmanship, and it's just, well, as long as we're ahead in the league, then who cares,
Well, next question for David Grant, at David Grant 19, a nice normal Twitter handle there. Is the CL a step too far for Celtic and Neil Lennon? Is Lenny right to air the club problems in public, or was it unprofessional? Champions League, it shouldn't be a step too far. Not, at least the group stages. It's got to be tough. You will come up against some decent sides in the playoffs and whatever. I think it's too far for Lennon. I don't think he's cut out for that level. I think football's moved on since the win against Barcelona. Was he right to air the club problems in public? No, in my opinion.
Not at all.
And I think it's completely unprofessional. If Gerrard done this, he would have been hounded by your support. Absolutely hounded.
And he is hounded sometimes, quite rightly, for some of the comments he does when he does throw his players under the bus.
Yeah.
The same. Was it unprofessional? Absolutely. That is just. It shouldn't be that. That should not be the way he conducts a press conference after losing such a meaningful game. It's not the way he does it. Champions League shouldn't be a step too far, no. But I think with regards to, you're more competitive in the Europa League and it's more enjoyable to watch.
Yes. Getting into the Champions League is like one of the questions. If somebody says, I'll give you £1 million, but you need to go in the ring with Mike Tyson, you're going to get your arse fucking handed to you. You're probably not going to see daylight for a month. but at the end of it, you're going to wake up with £1 million in your back bin. So that, to me, that's what the Champions League is for Celtic. No, it shouldn't be, because there's teams who are operating, on similar budgets to us, who are punching way above their weight, because they recruit properly, they coach properly, they scour the world for players. Mm-hmm. And, Atalanta they did get quite a bit of money for TV, but they generate next to nothing over and above that other than transfers. They've got a very small stadium.
Yeah.
Very small, everything else, but they've got they make money on transfers, it's not a fluke that they are finished top 4 2 years running, made the Italian Cup final last year, and then made the Champions League quarter final, and were a ball hair away for the semis. It's not a fluke. They play proper football, and they've got proper footballers in their team.
It's the same with Ajax. I know that's a little bit different because they have a world-renowned youth academy. They were a ball hair away from the Champions League final, and I wish they did get through, because it would have made for a much better final, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But it's the same again. Like, they're well coached. They've got plans in place. They have foundations, structures.
They have a philosophy from 5 years old to the first team. All the way through.
Yeah. I think that's what the word I was looking for. They have a philosophy. It is just, we need to get them in, and this is the plan, and they have a plan for every single person, every single age group, and it just rolls on. And they seem to consistently produce players. Frankie de Jong, De Ligt, going for big money to big
But
teams.
they're no scared to spend half what they bring in.
No.
They'll sell. They sold the boy to Juventus. What was his name? Delit, as you say. Aye, for what, £60 million. But they signed a Mexican centre back. Oh, his name escapes me now. He's an absolute quality. I think we were linked to him a few years ago. They brought him in for like €20 million, and he's an absolute monster of a defender. But so they've got guys coming in as their stars are leaving. They're no scared. They're no replacing a £30 million player with a £2 million player, or in our case with 25 million pound Kieran Tierney and replace them with 3 million Bolingoli and 2 million Taylor. So yeah,
it just gets back to though that club in maybe Atlanta too, maybe when they need to sell a player, they will not be scared to spend it when it comes to it. But they know that if they spend that, they know they have a better chance of getting through a qualifying round or having a better crack at Europe. They have a better structure in place, but we just seem to be penny pinching, and I just don't know though if we ever will get to that stage whereby there is going to be changes from top to bottom. That's just always at the back of my head as well. Is it ever going to change?
Well, it comes to the question, whether we win 10 or we don't, what's next? Because it can't just be, oh, let's go for 11 in a row and 12 in a row, because you can't sell that. You've already achieved what you set out to do domestically. Anything over and above that, it's just gravy, I suppose. There's got to be a better long-term strategy of where this club's going to go, because I think in the next 4 or 5 years European football is going to change anyway. I think the Europa League and stuff like that's going to get expanded, and I think there is a genuine look for UEFA to look at the smaller leagues to try and get them more revenue through playing teams of an equal measure, so to speak. And we can't be left behind on that. We can't just be stuck playing Hamilton and Ross County on plastic pitches or in the fucking Highlands, with a couple of coos in the distance. It's
past a few of them on the way.
Aye. So I think this is the last question that came in. This one came from Nicky Higgins at NickyBoy7. It's a bit long-winded, Nicky. Fucking hell, man. It's like a novel, but I'll do my best to work my way through it. So hopefully there's a point to it. He's like, it would be good to get into the signing policy and the fallacy that actually works on the podcast. We financially dwarf every single team that we can encounter on the qualifying route we take to the Champions League, and time again we're embarrassed. We need to be putting the fee for Kamala and Sorrel together by one in the 5 to 6 million bracket. Well, we've already kind of covered that, and take it from there. We need to get away from this 2 to 3 million. It does not work. £6 and £7 million big transfers in 10 years is not good enough. The money is wasted, horrendous. Can we also discuss how bad our midfield actually is? From the night Anderlecht pressed us high under Rodgers, any team that does their homework knows we will crumble when this happens. We panic and we're unable to pass the ball or control the game. Almost every team we come across look mile ahead technically and much more composed on the ball. Sorry for the rant, but that's a few things I'd like people's opinions on. I think then he's wrote a second question. He's wrote, people say Europa League is our level and to compete, that's probably right, but with the Champions route and our budget, it's an absolute disgrace we don't make the groups at least every other year. I agree with that. We should. I mean, what Will said in 2012, I think we're a Champions League club and we should be making the Champions League at least 3 in every 5 years. Well, we're making it 2 in every 7. So
so that needs to be improved dramatically if he wants to get his KPI, as it were.
Yeah. Well, I hope, Nicky, we kind of covered a lot of the points already. You're right about a lot of teams come to play. I mean, Copenhagen were technically good. They were a bit rough and ready at the back and, a wee bit rough and ready up front. But in the middle of the park, they controlled the game, and that's ultimately what won it. So
you come to Parkhead, you win the midfield battle, you have a good chance of winning the game.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be that way. It's certainly at Parkhead, because I think last night we were a bit all over the place. Certainly the Copenhagen game, it was the same. In that Anderlecht game, we were absolutely atrocious.
Yeah. Well, that was a night where he should have started in Cham. He didn't. He started Armstrong. Armstrong couldn't pass water, and then he took Armstrong off at half time, and the game pretty much turned back our way in the second half. And Cham was excellent, playing in his proper position. So, but we better probably move on to you. Done some homework on potential signings. Obviously, this was done prior to getting our arse handed to us last night. So whether any of these players are potentially going to ever come in, it's another matter. So I think we'll touch on the ones that we think that Lennon's talking about that want to leave. So I think it's a given that Incham and Ayer, according to their agents, are looking for a way out. But who else do you think he's talking about?
Wouldn't be surprised if it had Edwards and that.
I've heard Dembele as well. That's a rumour that's kicking about as well. Listen, I'll let you just put it out there. I have no knowledge or no inside track into Celtic. I don't know anyone apart from Peter Lawwell's wife being a big customer of my wife. You know, and as much as I press her to ask questions, she never fucking does. So I get nothing out of it. But. Yeah, she's probably going to be an ex-customer after my rant about Lawwell tonight, but
Peter Lawwell's listened to this, and
I have no chance. But no, I think, and one of our other customers is the wife of Celtic's lawyer, so she's keeping company with some high earners. But what was I saying? The players that want to leave, so potentially Dembele, Dembele. Because I think he's looking at it and thinking, I'm never getting a fucking game at this. But he's got a year to go, so what do you do? You know, do you sell him or do you try and persuade him to stay on?
I think there has been the case of that whereby it looks as if he isn't going to get a game. But I think that would get back to if there was proper coaching in place. I think you would see Dembele come on a wee bit better than what he currently would be.
I think he's looking at Christie moving out to Forrest's position at the weekend and Forrest getting dropped, and he's looking at it and saying, well, that's my position and I'm not even getting a sniff here. Same as Klimality was looking last night and saying, well, if I can't get picked for that, then what fucking chance have I got, you know?
At the same time, though, he is only 17, isn't he?
I know, but he's had his ego massaged since he was like 12-year-old, you know, and he's been with Celtic for all that time, and he's been on all these kind of, you know, boot. I don't know if it was like Adidas. I don't know who his boot sponsor is, but he's been on some of these programs showing his skills and stuff like that. So, you know, I hope he's not going to turn it into another Islam Feroz, you know, where he's made it type thing in his mind.
Stage. I think he's a bit above that stage, and I think there is a player in there. But back to Lennon with his favourites, is he going to drop Forrest? No chance. Is he going to drop Christie? Doesn't look like it. So wouldn't be surprised if Dembele was included in there, but at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if Edward was in there going, I'm not getting what I need here. You know.
The other name that came up was Julian. I'm not sure about Julian if he is one, but you know,
he's here for another. Like, you have to look at it how far are they here? Julian's here for another season, then might go. That, in my opinion.
Well, the way I would look at it is anybody we buy foreign, we've got them for 2 years. That players that we're bringing in to beef up and sell on. The fact that we've had Incham for 3 years was quite surprising.
And not consistently playing. Really.
Not consistent. Well, you know, I seen people last night giving it. You know, I seen it at the weekend as well. Even though he made the SPL Team of the Week, Incham, I seen people say, I don't know what he brings. He doesn't fucking do anything. He's shy. He's, you know, people build him up to be a superstar and he doesn't do anything. But he doesn't get played in his right position.
No.
As simple as that.
He played out of position twice, and it's just twice he didn't have a good game, and that's not just by chance or luck. That's because he's not been played in his right position, which is left back.
I thought he was decent at the weekend without being spectacular, but he definitely wasn't anywhere worse than some of the players in the park. And last night again, I thought he had some cracking touches. Nearly scored would have been a brilliant goal. I think he was good in that position, but I think if he was up there last night with Edward, I think Celtic would have had a lot more joy. But he's up there with a player who plays a similar position to him and as a 10 spot, you know. So,
and he's not a 10. He's definitely not a 10.
I don't think so either. I think he's better coming for deep.
Mm-hmm.
So
and being the box to box midfielder almost, you know.
So players that were linked to you wrote a wee list, didn't you?
Yeah, I've got a wee list here, but obviously with last night's calamity, I think a lot of them are probably listening to this podcast and going, "Nah, I don't want to go there at all." But yeah, I've got a few here. First of all, Noah Lang, the Ajax winger,
21, yeah.
21-year-old, made 8 appearances for Ajax and scored a hat trick on his debut for them.
So it's all downhill for here then.
So yeah. But he does fit the mantra of us. He has only got a year left in his contract.
Yeah.
So I don't think would command such a big fee, and he's a left winger. From what I've seen of him on Twitter, it looks a player. But it's back to looking at YouTube. You know, anybody could look good with a bit of YouTube video.
Yeah.
You know.
Aye. Does he get better ankles than Dirk Berichter?
Oh, well, I mean, I think Ajax always a good player, don't they? After Dirk Berichter, I mean, that is one guy who had a great 30 minutes and looked like a world beater against Ross County. Had one bad tackle, and you hardly hear from him again.
Well, while you're talking about Ajax, we've not actually been linked with this player, but I've mentioned him a couple of times on Twitter, and that's Ajax centre back who came for Boca Juniors about a year and a half ago. He get put out on loan to Alaves, I think, possibly. They signed him for €8 million, I think it was. I think they're trying to move him on, and that's Lissandro Magalan, I think his name is. I watched him when he was at Boca on their run to the Libertadores final against River Plate. Solid centre half, rough, ready. He's about 26, 27. He's got a few international caps for Argentina, but he's got Italian citizenship, so he's got an EU passport. So I don't think. I think they're trying to offload him. It's just no worked out from him there. But I have seen him play before. He has a big, solid centre half, and that's what we're looking for. So if anyone for the scouting network's listening in, have a word. But sorry, speaking of big centre halves, I think you maybe have some other names on that list.
Well, obviously. Shane Duffy is still one that we're still linked with, essentially.
I've seen a few independent journalists tweet the night that Shane Duffy's told Brighton that Celtic's where he wants to go, despite last night's result.
I mean, I think it would be a welcome addition. Not to say that it would be any better, but I certainly think it would be good to see him come in. Obviously, there was a cryptic photo on Monday, I think it was, whereby it looked as if he was going to Scotland, and it turns out that Brighton's base is in Scotland this year.
Aye. That was his brother, wasn't it?
Aye, and then his brother put on the picture of Parkhead, Celtic FC. And I would like him to come. I think it's what we need, something just to kind of G up the place, essentially, give us all a wee bit of a boost. I did think, though, the chances would have been hampered by last night's result, but going by what we've seen and what we've seen on Twitter, I would like him. That's all we've really got on Shane Duffy, I suppose, because the talks are still ongoing, but I think it's good that he wants to come, definitely. Moving on to Aaron Hickey. Now, I didn't know this about Aaron Hickey, though. He is versatile at the back. He can play any position, apparently.
I don't think he's your big rough and ready centre half, though, is he?
He's not your rough and ready centre half, but for a left back, excuse me, 18-year-old, only also got a year left in his contract. Would I be happy with him and Taylor as being a left backs? I personally wouldn't. Made 34 appearances and 1 goal against Hibs.
Well, Anne Budge has been on the news tonight saying that I think they've had a bid in, and I think it's for Bologna, and apparently that's where the boy wants to go. So for some reason, I just can't see that happening. Just before you move on to the next guy, I've just seen the results for the night. Aberdeen won 6-0 against Runovic, and Motherwell won 5-1 against Glentoran. So at least there's a couple of clubs out there doing something for the coefficient. So
good results, actually, so that's good. I'm happy to see that.
Aye, that's got to be a first. 2 Scottish teams that are now Celtic or Rangers winning in Europe in the same night.
But 4 player goals.
Yeah.
Excuse me, a bit of a cough here.
That's alright. Well, you've been on for an hour and a half, so your throat's probably
aye.
been ranting that long.
We're looking at also the boy in Turkey.
We spoke about him last week, the striker that doesn't score.
The striker that doesn't score, and
I see that £7 million. I can't.
£7 is laughable. I think that was just someone trying to beef him up.
And he's the wrong end of 20s as well. I think he's about 27, 28 as well. So from memory.
He's 26-year-old. He's got 2 years left in his contract. Still relatively unknown to be paying £7 million on him. And it was back to what we were saying last year. His most prolific season was with the Albanian team Partizan Tirana. And I just can't see that happening.
Yeah.
But the player I would like to see come in if we could is the boy from Atletico Madrid. Rodrigo Riquelme.
Yeah. 15 years too late for Riquelme.
I mean, it would have been great if it could have been the Juan Roman. But certainly this boy seems to have caught the eye in the UEFA Youth League against Rangers.
Yeah.
Been in Madrid set up since he was 10 years of age. And has came on as a sub for Thomas Lemar in their 3-2 loss to Eibar last season. And there's a certain Twitter account, is that Sean McDonald?
Yes, I know Sean. Well, not personally, but just through Twitter, I know.
Through Twitter. He certainly seems to know a little bit about
Sean,
the thing about Riquelme.
I think Sean was based in Barcelona. I don't know if it was through work or he lived. I know he lived out there, and there was quite a high profile Twitter account, like media account for related to Atletico Madrid with the blue tick and stuff like that, basically saying that Celtic were interested, but Atletico want to keep him, but he's not got long left in his contract, and Celtic are offering first team football and all that sort of thing. So he just done the translation on it.
Yeah.
Because I said to Sean, I was like, I use Google Translation, but if I couldn't get it to work, he was my next sort of point of call.
Because he certainly seemed to it looked as if it looked to indicate that we did have a chance with him, and certainly from what I saw, I like the look of him. Plays in the right wing, if I'm not mistaken, so certainly would be someone to
breathe down Forrest's neck.
Exactly, so challenge Forrest. Although, would you believe that it would challenge Forrest? It would be only 20 years of age. But from what I've seen, very pacey, very direct, not afraid to go at players, and certainly isn't afraid to put a tackle in as well.
Yeah, I've never understood that.
From what I saw,
Well, one thing I never understand is when people say, "Oh, we need to get backup for Forrest." Why not try and get somebody better than Forrest, and Forrest then has to fight again for his place? You surely is always every year is to try and improve 2 or 3 positions, and right now, or for the last couple of years, Forrest has had little or no competition in that position. So someday, if it's Riquelme or another right winger, I seen Ollie Burke linked last week, but he's got the first touch of a steel railing. So
that's a new one, but it is certainly true.
You ever kicked a ball off a steel railing? You don't know what way he's going to come back.
Well, that's a good one, actually. I'll remember that one. That'll be me at 5 next week when I make my return.
Aye. It's when you hit the ball off a square post that could fucking go anywhere. So
that was essentially who we kept, because that's mainly who we've been linked to over the past while.
Yeah, obviously Turnbull came in today.
Turnbull as well.
How to bury bad news.
Well, I think it was a very good deflection tactic today, wasn't it? I think if it hadn't been for the result today, that would have been dragged out maybe a wee bit longer. But that was certainly, it was shite last night. But here's a player. It was a good deflection tactic, I think. I'm happy we got him in. I hope he gets a chance and gets to play. In the 18-19 season, he scored 16 goals and 34 appearances. That's not to be sneezed at, I don't think.
Yeah. I can honestly say, and I don't mean this as disrespect to him, I have seen very, very little of him or paid any attention to him. So I'm trusting everyone who's saying this boy, is the sort of next big thing within our league, or the best player out with, probably Celtic and Rangers to go for. So I'm happy to give him a shout, but
exactly.
Is he a replacement for Brown long term? Obviously, he's still pretty young. Is he a replacement for Rogic or Encham? I don't know. So I think time will tell. But he's got to get games. He's as simple as that. Lennon has got to start drop people. If Lennon stays in the job, which I've no doubt that he will, unless he gets knocked out for the Europa League to some backwater Albanian mob,
then he's got to be
Partizan. Never heard of him before.
Partizan Tirana.
If he gets knocked out the Europa League, I could see him, potentially lose his job there. But I don't think he's going to lose his job. I think because of who he is and his connection to Celtic, I don't think Wallwell will pull the trigger on him. I think things would have to start to go wrong in the league before that happens.
Let's not kid ourselves. Could happen.
Yes.
We really need to up the game, and hopefully there's a bounce back against Motherwell. But I would agree with you when last year when it came about, there was certainly a bigger media circus over a certain Jake Hastie going to Rangers.
Yes. And now he's back at Motherwell. So obviously, I've got to applaud Turnbull. I mean, he had a really bad setback. It looked like everything was going well for him. They had the big fee agreed, and it was going to be the record fee between the clubs, and it was very much publicised. We saw the picture, and then obviously we've done it, and we've said, it's better if you go back, and he seems to have came back, and albeit apart from the game he played against Ross County, certainly his performances have improved. So I'll be willing to give him a chance, but I just hope he gets given the time and he's not just another waste of Scottish talent, which we have been guilty of in the past. Yeah, well, good luck to him. I hope he does well, and he's got a 4-year contract. So I would say on that, I think we'll call it a night. We've been on for nearly an hour and 40 minutes. That's the longest one yet. But obviously we had a lot to talk about. And we'll try and end it on a positive,
Well, hopefully it is a positive in that he will come in, and hopefully it is money well spent, and God knows we spoke about money tonight, but I'm happy with him. I'll take him.
Cool. Well, on that note, I'm going to call it a night, and we'll get this out to everybody as soon as, and I'll catch you next week.
Not a problem. See you next week, Stephen.
So I'm with my son Sean, who said he wants to be part of the podcast. So I've decided to give him his own wee 5-minute spiel. So we're going to have our mini match companion. So we'll speak about the team lineup before it. We'll talk at half time, and then we'll get the full time analysis. So this is all on Sean. So Sean, how you doing?
I'm good.
Right. So what's your thoughts on the lineup?
I think it's a pretty strong lineup. Obviously no Edward, but I don't know why we're either playing Christie at striker. I feel as if we should be playing either Klimala or a Jetty up top as a main striker. But if Christie can perform well, then maybe we can play like that on a regular basis when Edward's out.
Yeah, but the whole point is Lennon's said in the last couple of weeks that he wants a new striker. So do you think the fact that Klimala's not playing and obviously a Jetty's just in the door and he's probably not up to speed, do you think that means that he doesn't trust Klimala to play that position, even though he was kind of signed as a backup?
I don't know if he doesn't trust Klimala. I just think Christie knows the game better than Klimala, and obviously Klimala's just a few weeks in the door, just getting used to the lineup. So I think it's best if we play Christie up top, but in future I think we should either play Klimala or Ajay.
You do realise that we signed Klimala back in January. But I get what you mean. He's just back for. So the team we're playing, before I get you to give me the prediction, I want you to tell me what they're called.
Is it pronounced Ferencváros?
It's Ferencváros. So we'll come back at half time. But before we come back, before we start watching the game, what do you think the score will be tonight?
I'm going for a hopefully 3-0 Celtic.
3-0 Celtic. Right, we'll speak again at half time, alright?
Yeah.
Right, so it's half time. It's Celtic 0, Ferencváros 1. Sean, what's your thoughts on that first half?
I think it's been pretty poor from most of the players at the back, especially Julian. He's got no clue what's going on with him. His passes are all over the place. He's all over the shop. Same with Brown. Brown keeps getting beat. He keeps getting pushed off his man. I don't really think he's won a ball yet against his man. But I think El Hamid, he's had a good game so far, but throughout the whole game, I just think we've been pretty poor up until the last 5-10 minutes. We've created a few chances, but about that, it's really about it.
So the goal came for a corner. We've cleared it. Forrest kind of does nothing. The guy runs off him. Taylor, who's left back, runs out to meet the guy. The ball goes out right, and Brown is basically left with, does he meet the guy or does he let the guy play in the guy who's out far right? Because he's basically trying to cover two men, and obviously the guy has a shot and scores. What's your thoughts on that?
I think the guy was always going to go for the shot, but I think Brown should be closing him down, going in for the challenge, not really letting him make that pass or letting the shot get off. But it was a good goal, but Brown and Taylor should be doing much better by closing him down.
Do you think the keeper should have saved it?
It's far-fetched. I think it was so far on the side netting, but Barkas, he could have had a chance. I'd say it's 50-50.
We had a couple of chances towards the end of the first half. El Yunusi looked pretty dangerous, but probably the best chance was the Greg Taylor cross, and Ryan Christie tried to backheel it. Do you think he should have just put the laces through it with his left foot?
I think he should just put the laces through it with his left foot. I don't know what he's trying to do. I think he's trying to hit it, but he's also trying to hit it behind him, and he's just miskicked it. But Forrest, if he's coming in behind her, that's an easy tap in for him. But yeah, Christie should be putting that away.
So you think Forrest should have expected the ball to come right across?
I'm not saying he should have expected it, but I'm saying he could be there for the rebound just in case. But Christie should be putting that away either way.
Right, so who would you say is the best player we've had in the first half?
Best player? I'd say between El Yunusi and El Hamid. Obviously El Yunusi having quite a good few shots in goal, one of them being a great first touch and then just take a deflection over the bar. But yeah, I think he's been class the first half. Okay,
right. So do you think we can pull it back in the second half? Do you think we can go in and win the game?
I hope so, but I don't want to get my hopes up. But hopefully we can. Right,
you can't sit in the fence in a game like this. So what you got to say? What's the final score going to be?
Oh, I'm hoping for 2-1.
2-1. Right. Okay. We'll speak again at full time. Right, Sean. Game's just finished. We've lost 2-1. We're out the Champions League. What are you thinking?
I felt as if the second half were much better. Obviously getting the goal with the deflection, but I feel as if the amount of chances we made, I feel as if we should have put at least 2 or 3 away. But to concede that goal from a punt, El Hamid, I don't know what he's doing. He's trying to slide, but then he's not. But I don't know. It was just that from one mistake, we just conceded and we've lost the game.
So you think because he's on a yellow card, he's kind of conscious that he's probably the last man, and if he brings him down, he's going to probably get a red card? Do you think that's going through his mind, or is he just kind of caught in no man's land?
I think he's... Obviously, I don't know if he's known he's on a yellow card. I think just in the heat of the moment, I think he should be going for the tackle, but yeah, I don't know if he won the ball, then obviously I'd feel great, but obviously he missed it, and just what can you do about it?
Right, so we've waited until they've scored a second before we decide to bring on a substitute in a jetty. Do you think Lennon should have made changes a lot sooner?
Yeah, I think he should have made changes about 10 minutes after the goal, but yeah, he should have brought a jetty.
And particularly, you mean the goal that Christie scored?
Yeah, straight after the Christie goal, but I think he should have brought either a jetty or obviously brought in a jetty, but I think he should have brought in Klimality as well and take Christie off, because it just wasn't working for Christie, even though he got the goal, but it was a lucky deflection. But yeah, Lynn should have brought on a player much earlier. Right,
so disappointment. We're into the Europa League again. Do you think who do you blame for this? Where does the blame lie? Is it the players? Is it the manager? Is it Peter Lawwell? Or is it a bit of everybody?
I'd say it's a bit more Neil Lennon and some of the players in the pitch, but some of the substitutes were making far too late in the game. We needed some more fresh legs on. We needed to actually get a striker on earlier in the game, but Lennon, I don't know what he's doing. He's had a shocker.
Right. Well, Sean, this is your first mini match companion. I hope you enjoy getting your point of view out there, and well, hopefully the listeners enjoy your wee take on the game. All right, pal?
Yep.
And they gave us James McRory and Paul McStay. They gave us Johnston, Tully, Murdoch, Gold and Hay.